Hey guys, can you hear me? This is my first time doing a live stream, so I hope it's working out. Hey guys, if you can see me, can you drop a comment? It seems like no one can see me either. Oh, so you can see and hear. But the problem is we cannot hear Cassie. Cassie is with us here today, but somehow his mic is not connected and we cannot hear Cassie. Edit mic settings. Echo cancel reduce. Thanks, Mark. I'm doing this for the first time, and I'm supposed to interview Casey Fleming today, and he was in the studio, and we were testing the mic, but his mic is somehow is not connected, and I cannot hear him at all. Hey, thanks, Cinnamon. Thanks for your comment. And we have Casey back, but I don't know what's going on with your mic. Reduce mic. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining us today. We're we're still waiting for Casey to work out his mic. Yeah, we're doing great. Can you guys see Casey? Or can you guys only see me? Um, oh, they cannot see Casey. Crop layout. Hey, how do I make sure Casey is showing up?
Oh, can you hear
Oh,
me?
I can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, finally it works. I guess I don't know what. It's my first time. Sorry, Casey. So probably somewhere I made some mistake.
Hey, no problems. I'm here.
Oh,
Awesome.
awesome, awesome. You guys can hear me fine?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thank you for joining us. It's my first YouTube live stream. I'm pretty excited and nervous at the same time. Today we're doing a very important show because we're discussing a very important book that is coming out. The title of the book is The Red Tsunami, and it's written by our guest, Casey Fleming. And if you follow national security, cyber warfare, CCP infiltration, then you probably have heard of Casey Fleming. His work is top notch, and he understands CCP and connects the dots in a way that few people can. So, Cassie, why did you write this book?
It's a great question. I wrote the book because no one else would write the book. Um, I'm not. I'm not a book guy. Never wanted to write a book. I still don't want to write a book. But nobody was getting it done. Nobody was connecting the dots of really what's going on um, behind the scenes, under the surface. And I run a counterintelligence firm. And so counterintelligence connects all the dots. We know what's going on, but it's not getting out to the average citizen. So whether it's the US, Canada, UK, Australia, Japan, um, the citizens are on the front lines of this unrestricted war. that the CCP that's been building for years. So the citizens are on the front lines, not the military. And so if the citizens are waiting for the military to protect them, they're waiting for the wrong thing and the wrong time. That's the reason I wrote the book, because this unrestricted war by the CCP is focused on every citizen and all these different methods of warfare that they use to weaken the enemy. Yes, if you're in a free country, you are the enemy of the Chinese Communist Party. So they do all these things to weaken the enemy from inside. So their plan is just to have the enemy capitulate. That's Japan, like I said, Australia, New Zealand, UK, EU, US, Canada. So all these free countries, they're using these different methods of warfare, everything short of military or conventional war, to weaken the enemy. And of course, we are the enemy in the CCP's mind. So we are in direct competition with the Chinese Communist Party. They cannot have freedom exist alongside or with communism, because communism requires total and utmost control, surveillance, power, and that is just the opposite. That's oil and water to freedom. So that's the reason I wrote the book. Nobody was doing it. We're running out of time, and the average citizen has a right to know what's really going on behind the scenes. Their leadership is not telling them, like all the countries I just mentioned. You're not hearing all this. It's also our media is across the world is compromised by the Chinese Communist Party. So that's the reason I wrote the book. We expect it to be a blockbuster. So far, we've got to date, we've got 15, that's 15 endorsements, and they're over the top. They're saying all these guys and gals are tip of the spear, and they say, this is the book. So it is the book of the decade. It's not the book of the month. It's something, it's actually not a book. It's a survival guide. I call it a survival guide. So back to you, Ken. Thanks for asking why I wrote the book.
Cassie, what you're saying really resonates with what I've been seeing on my channel. People just sense something is wrong with China, with CCP's method of operating, but they cannot quite articulate it. I think your book just puts language to what millions, tens of millions are already feeling. Um, and you mentioned earlier that CCP hates freedom because it threatens their power. What I'm wondering is, why do they also hate Western freedom? Why do they hate Western democracy and freedom so much? How does Western freedom and democracy threaten their domestic rule, that they have to do everything they can to undermine Western freedom?
Because, like I said, it's oil and water between Western freedom and any type of freedom and complete totalitarian control of the communist regime. So that is the most extreme freedom, is Western freedom, because the freedom is with the people. The power is given to the people by, at least in the United States, by the Constitution. So the power is with the people. The people control the government mostly, and the power is within the people. That is a direct, absolute threat to the Chinese Communist Party, because there is no power with the people. The power, 100% of the power is in the party and at the very top of the party.
Very well said. And in a way, basically, Western freedom exposes a dangerous truth, which is that the people can run their own lives without the CCP. That's a nightmare scenario for them. Just imagine like a young Chinese like me, going abroad. I studied in the US. I saw free speech, open elections, independent courts. And then I suddenly just realized, like, wait, life doesn't have to be like this in China. And that is catastrophic for a regime built on the idea that people must be controlled, right? And the Western freedom just shows a completely different model where you can just criticize leaders without disappearing in some CCP jail. You can start a company without begging for state approval. You can just vote out independent politicians instead of have a bloody revolution. And that's this idea, freedom, just threatens CCP the most. And let's not forget, CCP is trying to dominate the world. They're trying their goal is world domination. They want to replace the United States as the most dominant power, and they want to export the authoritarian model. And for them to succeed in this effort to export their totalitarian model, Western freedom has to fail. That's the only way their model can sell, right?
That's 100% correct.
And Cassie, who is the audience that you are intending for this book?
Every citizen in the world, including Chinese citizens that want to be free and they want to be outside or away from CCP control. It's a dark dungeon. It's the CCP is nothing more than a radical, diabolical, dark regime, a mafia type organization. And all the power is at the very top, and there's always jockeying and terminations and so on within it. It's a very unstable administration or model that they're using, but they ride on the backs of all the people in China. And our understanding is at least, well, 2/3 of the population of China would like to be free, but they can't say it because they will be completely controlled or re-educated, if you will, in concentration camps and so on. So, like I said, a very, very dark regime. The world, if you understand really what's happening on this book, this survival guide, uncovers the entire strategy of the Chinese Communist Party and exactly what they're doing, how they're doing it against each citizen. It's written to the citizen. It's not written in intelligence speak. It's written to the citizen. So every person in the world needs to get a copy of this survival guide. And if there's any indication, a lot of my peers have rung back in on these endorsements. And I said, we've got 15 endorsements so far. We're probably going to get in a few more before it goes to print. Now, real quick, the survival guide is available now on pre-order at Amazon. It will ship. It goes to print in late January 20th, and it'll be shipping in early February. And that's on Amazon. So, this whole thing, everybody knows that something is wrong, something is amiss, because the CCP has been doing this unrestricted warfare strategy for several decades. And they've been working on each one of these countries to infiltrate and subvert the countries for eventual complete takeover. As you mentioned earlier in the podcast, they absolutely intend to completely control the world. So really what's at stake is, and I have a quote in the book, actually on the cover of the book, that the world will be won or lost within the next 10 years. And it could be sooner than that. What that means is the world will either be all communist with a very, very dark life for everyone under the communist regime. That means they control, the CCP will control all production, all consumption, everything you see, everything you hear will be according to propaganda and the CCP narrative, or you will be, quote, re-educated. You must report your children must report you must report your neighbors if anybody is out of line with what the CCP determines what society needs to have, which is, by the way, subservient over total control by the CCP. And incidentally, you can take your audience can follow LinkedIn. You can go to our company page, and as well as myself on LinkedIn, and follow both myself and the company. The company is Black Ops Partners, BLACKOPS Partners, and that's a company page you can follow. We post every day of unrestricted warfare and what's really going on in the world. So it's the time has come. The time is now for this survival guide. No one else would write it. I typically fly at 100,000 feet at Mach 5, and I don't know if anybody's written a book, but to write a book means you have to come down off all that and ride a bicycle for a year to get this information in a book. And this book is survival guide is not, it's not a romance novel. It's not a children's book. It takes a lot of information to put a book like this together. Basically, this book describes World War III as it's happening. And somebody asked me also, they said, what's it like? I said, well, it's kind of like building an airplane while you're flying it. So make no mistake, you are in World War III today. The strategy that they're operating under, the unrestricted warfare strategy, is exactly what World War III looks like. You've got things like fentanyl, which is drug warfare. You've got COVID, which is biological warfare. You have TikTok, which is cognitive warfare, and it goes on and on and on. The other thing is, if anybody in your audience believes in God, and most people in the world do believe in a higher power or a godlike power, you cannot be communism. You cannot be communist if you believe in God or a higher power. With communism, communism actually is a religion. And as it being a religion, the God is the CCP, and the supreme leader, who currently is Xi Jinping. You have to worship Xi Jinping as the God. And so what that means is there are no other gods. And so if that's the case, and when you look at it and you study it, if communism and the CCP is the God, that means that they are anti-God. Okay, well, if you're going anti-God, that means that you're anti-Christ, you're anti-God, and you're only communist God or Xi Jinping God. So what that means is, either there's God or there's communism, either there's God or there's Satan. So communism is a satanic cult. And so you have a choice. The audience has a choice, and everybody in the free world has a choice. You're either aligned with God and believe in God and a higher power, or you believe in communism and Xi Jinping. So that's your only choice. It's binary. It's on or it's off. So there is no in between. You either believe in God or you believe in communism, period. But the book really shows what's happening. A lot of stuff's happened. COVID was the big crisis to see how the world would react. Remember where COVID came from? Wuhan Institute of Virology, okay? Wuhan. And we called it the China virus until they got upset with that. I've always called it the CCP virus. So, and that's biological warfare. So everybody knew that once COVID hit, everything started to get really weird after that. For the next 6 months, you saw all this chaos unrolling, not just in the United States, but Canada and UK and EU, even Japan, to a lesser degree, Japan. But that's really what's happening. And people say, will somebody step up and tell me the truth? That's why I wrote the book.
And you cannot even do more valuable work than writing this book to waken the people up about the existential threats that China is posing to the free world. And Casey, I'm wondering, how should everyday Americans or anyone in the free world use the insights in this book to help protect themselves from this expansion of communism, to help defeat the communist domination around the world? Is there any practical action they can take in their daily life? Of course, on top of my mind is like the economic decoupling, right? Stop buying made in China junk products, not investing in China to have your capital held under the hostage of the CCP regime, which is already happening. We've seen the FDI into China collapsing because foreign investors realize that China is just uninvestable, right? And for corporate America and other foreign corporations, they are onshoring and friendshoring. So they're also reshaping the global supply chains to cut the dependence on China. But in terms of like the daily action that Americans or other people in the free world can undertake to protect themselves, do you have any suggestions?
Well, first of all, you just stole some of my thunder in the final chapter, but that's okay. The number one thing that you stated is absolutely correct. Stop buying Chinese goods and services. And so look at the label, do not buy those items. Do not invest. So a lot of people have investments they don't even understand. They're in mutual funds and so on. And those are invested in China or companies that are very pro-China and invested in China. So those are the top two things. The most important thing that everybody can do in a free world is stop buying goods and stop investing, because you're voting every single day, several times, every time you buy something, you're voting every day. And that's a great point. So voting when you're purchasing items, and also make sure your investments are not invested in stocks, mutual funds, bonds, any of that stuff that has any exposure to China or Hong Kong. So that's number one. But the book gives you the book gives you the information that you need to understand and to be educated on this subject. Once you put this book down, you're probably going to want to read it a second time. When you see a movie 2 times in a row, or you see it a few days apart, you get more out of the movie the second time. That's exactly what this book does. And I call it a book. It's a survival guide. So I call it a book, just it's easier to say that, but it is a survival guide. It's been written as a survival guide. So the final chapter has things that we put in there to make sure people are protecting themselves. The 2 things the Chinese Communist Party can't stand and do not want to happen is, number 1, for the average citizen to become informed. Well, the book/survival guide takes care of that. The second thing they can't stand and they cannot tolerate is that once those people become informed, that they unite and they take action. So those 2 things combined scares the absolute crap out of the Chinese Communist Party. And that's really, it takes away power and control now that people are informed and they know what to look out for in their own societies, in their own countries, of these things that are being destabilized so communism can take over. And I'm saying Chinese communism. The answer here is the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, is the grand puppeteer on the planet right now. And underneath them, they pull the strings with Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea, cartels. And underneath Iran, they also manage, through Iran, the terrorist organizations. So this is World War III. Make no mistake, this is World War III. And that's the thing. The Chinese, there's an old proverb in China. They say that there's death by 1,000 cuts. And so you don't, when you get cut, it hurts, it smarts, but it's not going to make you take action. It won't make you go to the emergency room. But after you accumulate 1,000 cuts, you die. And these cuts have been going on for years. The other analogy would be it's Pearl Harbor. Even though Pearl Harbor only happened in 2 hours, Pearl Harbor has been happening all day, every day for several decades. And that's not just the United States. That is for Canada, all the other countries I mentioned ahead of time. Every free country is being played. Africa is being, South America, Latin America is all being played by the Chinese Communist Party. Again, that's why I wrote this book /survival guide. So there's lots we can do. By the way, the book also has a movement behind it. And the movement is in development stage right now. So all there is a landing page, but that movement is freedomforever.global, not .com, .global. And so we're building that out as we're speaking and as the book is going to print. And that will be the book is static. It gives you the information, just like you go to college, university, it gives you the information, but there needs to be something that keeps it alive every day. New information, where to spend your money, who's a pro-CCP company, who's an anti-CCP company. So this is very serious. You're in a war, but people don't understand the power. This war is not about the military. It is not. And it's in fact, Xi Jinping and the CCP subscribing to Sun Tzu say that they want to win the war without fighting. They intend to fully win this war without fighting. So weakening each country from the inside to where they just don't have a will to fight anymore, and they become capitulated, and they're ready for takeover. Please, somebody take us over. So all this is going to make sense when you read the book. And it's it's been quite a journey getting this information out, getting it down. It's in final edit mode. I can tell you that's what I've been working on today and tomorrow as well. But I really appreciate you giving it the time so we can get this coverage out here ahead of time. And I'm out on a very strict speaking schedule for the next 2 months, so I'm very happy to work with you guys on this today.
And Cassie, do you think Western business leaders and policymakers should read this book as well? For instance, people like Ray Dalio, who is still harboring this, what I call like illusion about China's potential. It's still talking positively about the Chinese model. You have many Western leaders. I think it's pioneered by uh, politicians like Henry Kissinger, who have this engagement mindset with China and thinking that engaging China, helping China to grow, will transform China into a liberal democracy, that as China grows richer, it will change. But the past several decades have clearly shown that as their economy grow, instead of integrating into the world system as a responsible stakeholder, they have been proliferating um, weapons of massive destruction to regimes like Iran and North Korea. They have been engaging unrestricted warfare with with the free world. And people like Ray Dalio, they're very smart, right? They don't get to their current position in business or in politics without being smart. So why are they not waking up? Are they not waking up, or they're waking up? They know the threat, but they still doing what is their narrow business interest.
One word: greed. Greed. So Ray Dalio is smart, but he's greedy. We have Hollywood people that are smart, but they're greedy. Hollywood turned completely over for the CCP, US Hollywood, turned over for the CCP, completely controlled. And there's actually a documentary out there, came out about 2 years ago, called Hollywood Takeover. It's a 1-hour documentary. And actually the guy in it is the guy that brought the CCP, the executive in Hollywood, is like the main character in this thing. And he still thinks he can go back to the CCP and reset because of greed. It's my opinion of why these people do this. And that's why the individual, the citizen, needs to, number one, become informed, and number two, unite and take action. That people don't realize that the power in the citizen is absolutely the most important and strongest weapon that we have against the CCP. The military, they will probably likely never be called upon, because this thing's going to be won on the streets, the living rooms, the bedrooms, the companies, the schools, the hospitals. It's going to be won there, won or lost there. It's not going to be won by the military. And like I said, the last piece of this thing, the plan is never to go to the conventional side. At least the CCP's plan is to never go to conventional or kinetic war with battleships, troops, guns, bombs, drones, those kind of things. So, the other thing you have to realize is, for those who fought for freedom, previous generations of the free world that fought for freedom, now it's your turn. Now it's your turn. It's on your table. Your freedom, your children's freedom, and your family's freedom in the future is all on the line right now. So the best thing you can do is read this survival guide, get it to every family member, friend, colleague, and so on. That's the only reason I wrote it. Trust me, I still don't want to write this book, but I'm doing it because nobody else did. So right now there are 15 endorsements. A third of them are people who already wrote books on the CCP and China, but they wrote it to their own cronies. They're all smart people, wonderful people, but they wrote these books to what they knew. So military guys wrote it to military audience. Government guys wrote it to government audience. Nobody wrote the book to the only audience that matters, and that's the citizen. So People don't understand how diabolical and dark the Chinese communists are, the CCP. We're talking millions of murdered people. We're talking millions of oppressed. We're talking a history of murder. The CCP has murdered double all the other communist regimes combined, double. They murdered 45 million people in a 4-year period. 33,000 people a day they murdered. They're murdering Americans right now. Right now, their focus on fentanyl is murdering Americans. They're murdering 2 737s loaded with people every day. And it's not in our media. Why? Why? If you've got two, I mean, think about it. The last time you heard of an airplane crash in the US, we had this American Airlines regional jet crash in DC with an Army Black Hawk helicopter. That was an American Airlines regional jet. 1/3 the load capacity, 1/3 the people of a 737. So and that accident was in the news cycle for 3 weeks, every day for 3 weeks. So we have two 737s, which is 6 times more people going down every day, the equivalent going down every day. And you don't hear a peep. It's the same thing. The United States lost 150,000 troops every year in World War II. It's like the World War II never ended. And that was on every page of the newspaper back in the 40s. Every day, every page in the newspaper. You don't see any of that. So this is really, truly a well-articulated and well-orchestrated war against the free world. So if you're not hearing these kind of numbers from your media source, it's time to get rid of that media source and find a media source that is covering things like cognitive warfare, drug warfare, fentanyl. And by the way, it's not just fentanyl. There's other drugs as well that they're peppering the streets, not just the US, but around the world in the free markets. But the biggest one is the US market.
And on top of that, as part of the unrestricted warfare, now the CCP is engaging in sex warfare as well, because evidently a lot of Western leaders are infatuated with Chinese women or having like Chinese wives. Who knows what is the background of these Chinese wives? The president of Oracle is married to a Chinese wife, and we recently read about the news surrounding Larry Summers, who is infatuated with a Chinese economist. So it's truly like unrestricted, in the essence of that word.
Well, it actually is. If you ever follow World War II movies, I say this is World War II all over again, but this time at the speed of technology and the stealth and no rules of unrestricted war. So absolutely everything, the thing is weaponize. Xi Jinping says, we will weaponize everything against the West. So that means everything. Anything and everything is weaponized to take down the West, while they still say, hey, we're the happy panda, we're the friendly panda, we're doing a peaceful rise. But you look at their actions, every single action, every single agreement, every single treaty that they've ever agreed to, they've never honored. And then they use plausible deniability. Well, it wasn't us, must have been somebody else. So they truly are a sneaky, diabolical, and it's not evil. I don't use the word evil. I use a word that's higher than evil, and that's diabolical. Somebody creating viruses to kill a race or numerous races, but protect Han Chinese and maybe one other nationality or another race, but to kill all other races. Now, is that diabolical? Is that diabolical? Are they so throwing a virus out? And we've got heat maps from intelligence organizations showing once the virus was discovered in Wuhan, you can still see flights leaving Beijing, Shanghai, They're still leaving for the next 10 days, just in their heat map showing the intensity of the number of flights leaving those cities over the next 10 days. And so they're exporting the virus by design and by plan to the rest of the world. And then that was a dry run, so they could watch to see how the world would react. So it's, yeah, that's what we're dealing with. And that's why I wrote the book. So we keep coming back to why I wrote the book. That's why. So we're uncovering a lot of these things. And by the way, we're just scratching the surface on what I cover in the book. We're just scratching the surface. So this is all important. And I love educating people around this whole topic, because nothing else matters more. Nothing else matters more. While we're busy raising children, going to college or going to work or having holidays, we're busy being distracted. They're advancing this very, very dark strategy, wartime strategy against every citizen, every free citizen on the planet.
And Cassie, you wrote this book now, so I assume that you don't think it is too late to fight back, that the West still has time to correct these mistakes that it made with China before. And I think you think the coming decade is the most crucial decade to get things right with China. Why do you think, in terms of timing, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think the maximum amount of time we have is 10 years. It could be as short as 5. Now, the CCP fully intends to be in control of the entire world by the year 2049. Okay, that's the 100-year anniversary of them coming to power in 1949. But they're ahead of plan. They've achieved their goals of their 2025 plan. They're achieving their goals of their 2030 plan. And we just continue to, and the way that they've infiltrated and subverted the UK government, the Canadian government, the US government, the Australian government, with money, the money we give them, that by buying products and partnerships, they turn around and use that money and weaponize it against us by all the things we just mentioned, all the different things. So we're running out of time. That's why I wrote the book. Nobody else was doing it, and we're running out of time. I can see the clock. In fact, if you go to the website for the book, it's called the Red Tsunami.com. There's a countdown clock on that website. So I do think we have enough time, but we don't have any time to waste at all. So that's why you can sense that I have a sense of urgency in my speech. And I tell people, order the book. It's pre-order now. It'll be out on January 20th in all versions. You can order it then and get it shipped directly. But if you order it now, it'll ship in late January. So, and by the way, that's not too far away. And that's why I'm working 20 hours a day right now, getting it finished so we can send it to the publisher. So we do have time, but we all have to work together. We all have to be one, and we all have to come together. So what they're doing is they're splitting a lot of us, okay? All this cognitive warfare, social media warfare, is to split us apart. Racism. In the US, it's left against right, blacks against whites, Democrats against Republicans. Well, guess what? We're all together in this. I don't care if you're Japanese, you're Chinese American, or Chinese national that doesn't like the CCP, Canadian, Australian, UK, EU. We all share a common enemy. So you're my brother. You're my brother in this fight. We're in this war together, and we all share a common enemy. So if you're left or right, or you're Chinese national, or you're Japanese, or any other nationality, if you believe in God and you believe in freedom, we're all united. We're on the same team. We're in the same fight, and we share a common enemy. That's what this is. And you don't hear this all the time. You don't hear it anywhere. Nobody's when I speak, I go on speaking engagements or podcasts or TV shows, and people just, first of all, they don't have the knowledge. They don't have the intelligence or the counterintelligence to connect the dots. So I'm coming out of the shadows in counterintelligence to connect the dots. So you connect the dots, I connect the dots, and then I expand on each one of the dots with common research. And it's like, okay, now I get it. Okay, so this is connected to that. That's connected to that. This is because of this. This is part of unrestricted warfare here, A, and unrestricted B. And so all those are connected, but then we show the research. I show the research of each one of those dots. So it's irrefutable. And when I have 15 of my peers on the cutting edge, on the tip of the spear, 15 of my peers coming out and putting out these types of endorsements, you know, it's the right thing at the right time, and we did the right job. They've all read the book. So it's, I'm excited because you never know you never know when the finished product comes out, if you've really done the right job and if you communicated it properly and you're able to engage the reader. And it's refreshing. I can tell the audience that I have a load off. I did what I needed to do. I'm more than satisfied that I accomplished my mission of getting this education out to everybody. So it begins, and by the way, this isn't a once and done education. This starts your learning process because it has to go on for quite a period of time. Let me go back. When I started this 15 years ago, I came out of technology. I came out of management consulting. I wasn't in counterintelligence until 15 years ago. And then I put together a company, put together an extended network of probably over 400 people in counterintelligence and subject matter experts, not just in the US, but throughout the world. This book is a world book. It does cover a lot in the US because with freedom, the saying is, if the United States sneezes, the rest of the free world gets pneumonia. So that's why, so the focus is on the US, but it expands to every free world nation and every free world citizen that's out there. So
And Casey, was
it's
there
important.
was there a specific moment, event, or pattern that made you realize that CCP is the threat it is? When did you wake up to this threat? Did you wake up after Xi Jinping took over, or you saw the true nature of CCP even 20 years ago? When did you come to this conclusion?
2001.
2001. What happened in 2001?
United States Navy surveillance aircraft off the coast of China, Hainan Island.
Oh, and they crashed, and
the Chinese
pilot that died in that crash.
The Chinese People's Liberation Air Force J-8 rammed and forced this American aircraft down that had 24 people on it, and they kept them detained for about 10 days on Hainan Island, and then they had to leave. They had to leave the aircraft to be basically blueprinted by the CCP. That was my first wake-up call. I call that day zero. My day one was several years later in 2011. I was attending an executive briefing with the FBI, and they were talking about economic espionage and theft of intellectual property. And I'm like, wait a minute, these are my clients. I've never heard that it's this bad. So I commissioned a study. And it was like, oh my God, this is so bad that, and then, so I was at a split because I was ready to be another CEO of a cybersecurity company. And at the time we had like 4,000 cybersecurity companies. And do I need to do that? But the thing is, we have all this coverage on cybersecurity software, but nobody was focused on the enemy. Nobody was focused on the enemy. And I felt that the best thing that I could do is focus on the enemy. And that's why I created the company 15 years ago, 2011, from that FBI briefing. And that's how all this took place. And so I don't do things lightly. And you know, all this is covered in the book, but it's like, why do I do it? I was raised by a father and in a family of selfless service. And we were taught to run to the fire, not away from it, to run to the fire to help people. And so when this came across my desk, it was just, yeah, I could have been like a lot of other people and focused on personal, work, family, all that. Well, I still did that, but I was also focused on this. So And it comes down to, if not me, then who's going to do it? And I just mentioned there's a lot of other great authors. They cover the CCP excellently, but they don't communicate it to the most important people. And the most important people in this war is the citizen. And we call them, in the US, we call them John Q. Public, but it's the average citizen that they need to understand. Their freedom is leaving. In fact, that's the title of the book. It's the Red Tsunami, and it's the silent storm killing your freedom. That's the title.
Jesse, I think you're doing great work, and I think it's interesting you mentioned the year 2001, because that is also the year that I first realized how harmful and insidious the education in China is, and how CCP has completely dehumanized the West. Because what happened I shared with this story with you before, but I'm going to share with my audience because I never talk about it in public. In 2001, what happened is the 9/11 terrorist attack. That's a tragedy that any person with any ounce of humanity can sympathize with. But in my high school in China, I was still in high school back then, some of the top students in my class academically, once they heard the 9/11 tragic news, they celebrated. They jumped upside and down. They clapped their hands. They were just so happy that this tragedy happened to an evil empire, right? To China's enemy, the US. That teenagers in high school would be so happy that this thing happened. So it just shows you the extent to which the Chinese youth have been indoctrinated by the CCP. And this indoctrination didn't just happen in classroom, because I didn't hear my history teacher or math teacher openly just talking bad about the US. This indoctrination happened, in a social media, on state TV. So in family, probably their parents said a lot of negative things about the US. And this was in 2001. This was 24 years ago. A lot of people think China became this monster after Xi Jinping took over, that China was this benign, responsible power 20 years ago when they just joined WTO under Xi's predecessor, Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao. I'm saying no. China's hostile um, hostile feelings toward the West dating way back to the Mao Zedong era when they fought the US in Korea, right? So, and this negative hostile feeling toward the US never disappeared. They just hide it for economic reasons, because after Deng Xiaoping took over, their economy was in complete shambles. And to get out of poverty, they have to export their way out of it. So they have to establish a working relationship with the US. And that is why they hide their true intentions and integrate it into the system. But this negative indoctrination never left the Chinese system. The CCP has viewed the US as their existential threat since its founding, basically.
It's very true that they paint the picture that the United States is very dark, very evil, disgusting, decadent, and it's a country in decline. All these type of things, and they celebrate. To your point, they celebrate the whole war with the Korean War. They claim that they won. The CCP claims that they won the Korean War. They didn't. It was a tie. But I view ties on this along that same lines. I view ties as a loss, not a win. And then, of course, Vietnam. So they celebrate going after and killing Americans. They celebrate that, and it's all through propaganda and social media and so on, killing Americans. So, to
Cassie,
your point, it's gone on for a long time.
The real winners of the Korean War is not CCP, is not the US. The real winners of the Korean War are the Chinese people. Because here's the reason. The US really helped liberate the Chinese. What happened in Korean War is the son of the Mao Zedong was killed by US bombing in Korean War. And that son was the successor, what groomed to become the next emperor of China. So if that son was not accidentally killed in Korea by US fighter jets after Mao Zedong passed away, it would just be another North Korea, like the Kim Jong Un family dynasty. Mao Zedong's son will succeed to the throne, and all the Chinese will keep being the slaves that they were. It is because the U.S. get rid of this, um, this successor to be groaned, that they have a choice, they have the option to stand up and become freer within the CCP system. So they are the real winners. And if you talk about a Thai, well, what is their casualty number, right? What is the U.S. casualty number? I bet the real number is probably 10-1. So if you call that a tie, well, they paid a much higher price to achieve this tie. And for the future, I agree with you that the CCP is a huge existential threat because they export virus, not just physical virus, but mental virus, ideological virus, and political virus. At the same time, I'm still optimistic that the West will eventually win. The free world will win because freedom will prevail. And the reason is, I think China is a lot more fragile than what many people in the West think. Many people see the West, see China doing influence operations abroad through its Belt and Road Initiative, uh, and they do not appreciate enough how fragile the system actually is, both politically, both economically, both in and also in terms of the demographic collapse. So yes, they are expending their resources in infiltrating the West, but at the same time, they are probably going bankrupt in the coming years. And once that happened, once the economy completely crashed and the government is fiscally bankrupt, they wouldn't have the resources to keep interfering in foreign countries' affairs. They don't have the resources to keep sending these spies. They don't have the resources to keep harassing neighbors like Japan and Taiwan. So they're squandering their little precious resources left while ignoring the rot within their own economy. Because ultimately, for them to be strong, the economy have to be strong, but the economy is not. I've been saying in my channel almost on a daily basis that the economy is in huge trouble on a variety of fronts. Their market has crashed. Their unemployment rate is through the roof. Their younger generation is too scared to get married. They're lying flat, and the middle class has been wiped out. Their balance sheet is in huge trouble because of the property crash. So when all these things are happening, eventually the central government in Beijing would not be able to collect enough tax revenue to keep, doing these foreign operations. So before that completely happens, we just need to protect ourselves from the virus they're still exporting and do our part to make sure we don't waste our money investing in China. We don't support their economic growth by keep funding their military by purchasing their products and contributing to their current account surplus, which will be harvested and invested in these Belt and Road initiatives. So that's my optimistic take that they will eventually collapse on their own because of their internal problems. They will not collapse because the West sanctioned them. They will not collapse because Trump administration launched a trade war. They will collapse because President Xi Jinping, in the effort to strengthen the rule of CCP, will crack down their private sector and throw the stones on their own feet. and the internal contradictions of CCP system itself will unravel on its own. And the rest of the world will just need to be patient, play the long game, and have confidence in the idea of democracy and freedom. Have the faith that eventually freedom and democracy will win over authoritarianism, which has been proven many, many times before. People need to have confidence about the strength of the system instead of thinking that they need to imitate China by adopting their failed authoritarian system. That is when the West will completely decline, is when they think the Chinese model is worth emulating by cracking down free speech, by arresting political opponents, by weaponizing justice system. If that's the road Western world goes down, then the CCP will win without firing a shot. But if the West, keep embracing free markets, free speech, and all the values that powered the Western rise in the first place, and if the CCP is going back to its authoritarian roots like it is going now under Xi Jinping, then I'm confident that yes, they can do all they want to hurt the West, but their efforts will fail eventually.
I agree with you on all those points, but number one, first of all, the damage that they've already done with other countries, the UK, Canada, US, the infiltration and the subversion, getting to the younger generations to have them talk about democratic socialism, and that's what they want is democratic socialism. Well, the only other word, the word for democratic socialism is communism. And, we just put a mayor in New York City that's a total communist under democratic socialism. So you've got that. I agree that the economy will probably crack and break inside of China, which is the CCP. However, the thing that we all know that gets people out of bad situations in economies is start a war. So, you can't rule out that the CCP may want to start a war. The other thing is they've got the tools in place called social credit system, total surveillance, digital yuan to take the money straight from the people and say, keep working, and your paycheck, you got to spend your paycheck in not just 60 days, now 30 days. You got to spend it on the economy, or we're going to take half of it and pay for the military. So I agree with you that it's fragile. Xi Jinping might get ruled out and somebody else back in, or he might have a heart attack. But we know that the CCP is more like a hydra. There'll be a leader right behind him. So if the CCP does end up failing, and that's not a total given yet, but if they end up failing, it's going to be a very rough road to get there. So in other words, the rest of the world's going to have very, very big struggle because they're not going to go out without a fight. They're not going to go out without making the rest of the world pay for it. So, yes, I agree with you. The economy in China right now is extremely fragile, and it's also, a lot of what they post online and what they post in is propaganda. A lot of it's done with AI imaging and so on. So we know what's going on inside the country, but it is not. Don't rule out the CCP, and don't rule out them bullying and turning the rest of the population into slaves to get what they want. And by the way, don't forget, they murdered 45 million people. That was just over a 4-year period. They do live human organ transplants. Since that began, that's about 3 million as far as our intelligence groups believe. It's about 3 million people. This is a murderous regime. They've murdered their own people for decades. That's not a problem. And incidentally, they say that they're 1.4 billion. If you do the math, it's more like maybe 500 or 600, maybe max 800 million. If you do the math, they had 500 million in 1950. Then they got rid of 45 million through murder and other atrocities. Then they had the one child rule for 4 decades. So when you do the math, there's no way they could be 1.4 billion today. If you do the math on those numbers, it's more like 600 to 800 million. So, we talked earlier in this broadcast how American companies want to get at those 1.4 billion. It's like, well, first of all, half of those people are in poverty now, and if it's 1.4 billion, and the addressable market is much less, and then the 1.4, like I said, is down to like 600 or 800 million. So it's this whole shell game. It's it's not what you see is not what you get. My only point is, don't rule the CCP out. There's a lot of 100 years of passion that's behind it since 1925 when they began, and when they came to power in 1949. That's 100 years right now when they were founded and originated. You can't rule them out. That's 100 years worth of belief, power, tradition. And don't forget, they erased, this Chinese Communist Party erased Chinese culture. Confucianism is banned. I mean, he was made an outlaw, and his teachings were made an outlaw. So, like I said, don't ever count out a very dark and diabolical regime. They're not going to go out quietly. If they go out, when they go out.
Well said, Casey. And I think it's the Chinese people that suffered the most under the CCP, more than people anywhere else in the world. It's the Chinese people. And you talk about the number of killings. That's the people we can count. What about the one-child policy, all the abortions? That is the people you cannot even count.
Right.
The one-child policy probably killed hundreds of millions of fetuses. Yep. And that just shows you the nature of this regime that forced abortion upon hundreds of millions of families. And just one policy can do this damage from authoritarian system.
So you just made a point, and I need to make a point on that as well. The Chinese people, you're right. The Chinese people are probably the most persecuted and the most abused, and have the most. They've already lost a lot, and they have more to lose as the CCP continues their push for global domination. So I want to be very clear. Our issue is not with the Chinese people or Chinese Americans. Our issue is with the CCP. And I need to make that very clear. We're not enemies of the Chinese people. We don't want to be enemies of the Chinese people. In fact, we want to liberate the Chinese people and liberate them into freedom. That would be the best plan.
And Casey, I know people watching here have some questions. And honestly, our conversation is just scratching the surface. So let me just open it up to audience so they can dive deeper with us. We have one question from Mike Linux 1961, and she asked, Casey, is Europe and the US coming together to fight the CCP, or are they not aligned on this? So I think she's asking about whether the Europe and the US are aligned on this.
We are not. Europe and the US are not aligned at the current time, but honestly, that's one of the other reasons I wrote the book, is to bring all of us together, all free nations and free people together. Europe is much more down the line of infiltrated and subverted by the CCP. They're getting rid of free speech in the UK. They're getting rid of free speech in Canada. Free speech is a requirement to host freedom. So here's the point. As this situation devolves, and it will, you can't look at the numbers. You can't watch the weather patterns and say the clouds are all getting dark and the winds are picking up and say we're not going to have a storm. There is a storm coming. We're in a storm, and it's been building, and there's no way out of this storm. So it is happening. I believe that when all the chips are down, and when it goes to the next stage of development, that these free nations will come together. But make no mistake, the CCP has been very effective in their infiltration and subversion. They've partnered with the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum wants to have just the top people in the world, quote, what they determine, who they determine will be the top people in the world, to run the world under a one world order. And they want Chinese communism as the economic or system model. And so you either, like I said when we started, you either have a communist model or you have a free world model, capitalism. And so the World Economic Forum can't operate under capitalism because they haven't been able to for now, and they've been operating in the shadows. But their plan also is to continue to partner with the CCP for complete and utter takeover. I've got news for the World Economic Forum and the UN and the WHO, and of course, World Economic Forum is WEF. I got news for you. When you come up against a communist regime, they play you as a useful idiot. Lenin called people that, people who facilitate the cause inside of the country or inside of the target. They're useful idiots because they're advancing the communist cause. And so the point is, if you understand Chinese communism, and by the way, Chinese flavor of communism is even darker than Russian communism, that they'll just kill you. You know, the CCP will say, hey, you served your purpose. Come on, let's go for a walk. And they'll put a bullet through you. So, and the same thing, when everybody's being played, and they're doing, by the way, this chess game, this 3D chess game that the Chinese Communist Party is playing, they're darn good at it. They're really good at it. And they create all this chaos and noise and confusion while they advance their cause. They're doing very, very well. So there's a lot of scar tissue that's built up in free nations over the past 3 decades, and really over the past 10 years and the last 5 years. There's a lot of scar tissue that has to be cut through. And I believe that we'll all come together when it's time, and to present a united front like we did before in World War I and World War II, to present a united front in this. Again, we are in World War III. Hope that answered it.
All right, everyone. If tonight's conversation opened your eyes even a little bit, then Casey's book, The Red Tsunami, is the book you need to read, or send it as a gift to people that you care. You know, it is clear, it is direct, and it fully explains what CCP is doing in a way that nobody else can. And I think we can all clearly see the wealth of knowledge Casey has about the threats that the CCP is posing to the free world. So if you want the real picture, not the sanitized version presented by the mainstream media, then grab this book. It will change how you see the world. Casey, any final thoughts before we wrap up today's live stream?
The book will change your life. Absolutely will change your life. I'll tell you, it's good reading. It's easy reading, but it's not going to feel good. It's going to be the truth that nobody's giving you. It's the truth you've been asking for. When I speak around, when I do podcasts, when I speak all over the world, people ask, where's your book? And I've never done a book. I never wanted to ride a bicycle for a year and slow down and have to, do paperwork for a year and put this thing together. But I did. I did because it's my duty. It's my honor to do that. And there's nothing more important in your life than what's going on now. You know it. You saw it with COVID. You saw everything unwind. You think the world fell off a cliff ever since COVID. These are the answers, 100%. And I've got way too many peers that have rung in that'll be in the front of this book with endorsements telling you that this is the book. And so there's nothing more important in your life. Last century, we did a lot of cool things, went to the moon, we invented computers, we did all these different things, solved a lot of diseases, all that kind of stuff. The one thing that happened last century was World War II, and it dictated the future of this century. That's what we're up against now. We're in World War III. It will dictate the future of this century. There's nothing more important than this unrestricted war. And I just wrote the guide for you to understand it.
And congratulations for writing such an important work, which is a great service to the free world. Thank you for joining us. We learned a lot, and I'm very happy that this my very first live stream finally concluded successfully, even though we had some initial problem with the audio, but it worked out just fine. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And good luck with your book, Casey.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.